What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the fantasy football podcast. I'm Chris Welsh, and today we are talking sleepers. Are there sleepers in August? You're dang right they are. But we're not just talking any sleepers. We're talking running back sleepers. Whether you're a hero or a zero to the running back range, these are going to help your team out. And joining me today is Pat Fitzmaurice and Jake Ciely, two of my best friends in here. Jake rocking the hat and Pat rocking the takes. Pat, what's up, buddy?
Doing well, Walsh. How about you? I got 4 drafts cooking simultaneously, including Jake's Flex Best Ball League. So, yeah, it feels like we are deep into August.
While we're doing the show, are you going to be drafting while we're in a show?
Yeah, hopefully not. I should be okay in one league where we've got a 1 hour clock and there were like 6 picks to go before me. So, as long as we hustle through, I've got you guys on the clock. Got to hurry.
Well, we're all going to be watching you. We're going to be watching you to see if your eyes start to wander and you start drafting while we're doing the show.
He also pre-drafted a spot too, so unless he gets sniped, I think he's good.
Yeah, Jake, this is great talking about these running back sleepers here because we're coming off of your flex leagues. I just did my one quarterback last week. I think you guys are in the best ball here, and that is a definite strategy I saw in the one quarterback league where there was that slight run of running backs, and then there's kind of a big wait. And I would actually say the interesting thing about doing this show as well is over the last couple days, at least while we're recording this, quite a few running backs that were sleepers are not so sleepy anymore. They're starting to jump up, and we're going to talk about a few of those guys, whether it's been people are screaming about the usage that these guys are getting in preseason. Maybe a guy in front of another is going to be traded. There's some rumors out there. There's floating. So there's a lot of craziness in it. But we're going to be talking about fantasy football sleepers through and through, value sleepers, deep sleepers, and we're even going to get into the discussion of the players that are disguised as sleepers. So fake sleepers, if you've never had that. So we've got all of that in store for you on this episode today. If you guys want to follow along with some of the conversation, you guys can always check out how we're referencing some of these players when we do ECR or ADP. So ECR is the expert consensus ranks, which you can find over at fantasypros.com/rankings, or you can check out the aggregate ADP, fantasypros.com/NFL/ADP. If you want to take a look, you can pick your formats and then you can see like, all right, this is what, ESPN, Yahoo, and a couple other sites, this is what the aggregate ADP does. We'll be using those, and you will be using it with us. So let's jump in and let's just get right into the names. We're talking value sleepers. We've got a couple names that we're going to be hitting here. So Jake, why don't you start us off? We're kind of looking at like rounds 6 through 9 where, we're not identifying sleepers as like first 4 or 5 rounds or anything like that. We're not into the deep sleeper range here. So this is that mid-tier identified sleeper. Who is number 1 for you?
I say number 1. I'm not that excited
about
number
one on the list. Number 1 on the list.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I admittedly have been getting more excited because the situation behind this running back has been somebody who we have a lot of excitement for, who's been injured, and then the other person finally got their chance, that being Miles Sanders, and did Miles Sanders things, which said, hey, you know what? Clearly, you're not the answer, which means as of right now, Javonte Williams is. Like, I know we're excited for Giddens Blue, but I do believe that Giddens Blue is always going to be a timeshare piece at best anyway, which could be Jaylen Warren value, don't get me wrong. But if there was going to be a lead in this backfield, let's remember Javonte Williams before he got hurt. And if we could even get 90% of that, who included passing game work and passing game ability, I think Javonte Williams is the winner here because, unfortunately, the Blue injury, he hasn't been able to get on the field this past week. And that doesn't mean that Giddens Blue is not going to be involved, but I think that just opens the door even more so. Similar to the situation with Tyrone Tracy and Scadaboo. Scadaboo hasn't been able to get on the field to kind of make his impact and take some touches away from Tracy. So I think this is very similar. As long as Javonte Williams is healthy, they've kept him out, which tells us he's the one. I think that we should get in on this because if Javonte Williams is even a fringe RB2 or RB3 where he's going in this range, it's not the most exciting. Like I said, he's not number 1 in my excitement poll, but he's number 1 in like, hey, this is a value. If you do what your approach that you didn't kind of say is like the hero RB was a lot of teams were doing that in flex is one big. And then I'm waiting 4 or 5 rounds to get another running back. And that could be your answer at number 2, but you're getting him as a number 3.
So one question to ask you is if there was a Brian Robinson that wasn't on the Commanders. Like, so that would have been a situation where we hear these rumors where Brian Robinson could be traded. My instant first thought was like, oh my gosh, the Cowboys have been tied to running backs all offseason. But clearly those teams are not not a good match and not a good pairing here. So you kind of take that off.
Yeah.
But like, if it weren't, and I know I'm playing this weird scenario because maybe there's another running back or two that could be floating out there. Would that have changed your mind at all if there was a running back of the ilk of a Brian Robinson that could have been available for the Cowboys? Would you be worried about that at all? That rumor that they were looking to try to acquire somebody could affect, this usage that you're kind of playing out for him to be a sleeper?
Of course, because that would tell us that the Cowboys don't have faith that Javonte Williams is anything like he used to be. I mean, we're going into the third, for all intents and purposes, year from this injury for Javonte Williams. If we kind of gave him a pass, like, all right, last year should have been the rebound, but the timeline kind of put it more at the back end. Not that he looked good at the end of last year, but we're now at the point where if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. Like, this is kind of like the dead tell. You could go back to Deonta Foreman, who kind of had that late revitalization in his career, but that was like a 3-year scenario. So you could say that's the case. But as you're asking the question, if the Cowboys were still looking, if they were still interested, hell, if cuts happen and they add somebody to the roster, that'd be like, hey, Jalen Blue is still banged up. Miles Sanders looks like trash. Phil Maffa is not a factor, which I don't think has been a factor to this point. But all that being said, is just adding another piece would be like, go to the Texans. Dameon Pierce got cut because Woody Marks and Joe Mixon surprisingly ready for week 1, and they bring in Dameon Pierce. Then, yeah, that would give me a little bit pause because that would kind of be a telling. Maybe they don't believe he's okay.
Yeah, and I guess a better way for me to have phrased it probably was like, let's say the Jaguars openly were like, hey, Travis Etienne, we are going to sell him. And then we also got like the Chargers saying, you know what, we're going to move on from Najee Harris. If you knew that there were 1 or 2 viable running backs in the market, would even the speculation give you a little bit of pause on a guy like Javonte, knowing the history?
Maybe
of
a
what
few spots.
Okay.
And I want to go crazy, but maybe a few spots.
Pat, what do you think about Javonte Williams here as a sleeper? ADP, he comes in at 36.5 PPR in our aggregate, which has got like Yahoo Sleeper, RTS Sports in here. He's going right above J.K. Dobbins. He's actually going below Cam Skattebo, which kind of opens your eyes. Ranks, he's 1 spot higher. He's 35. He's in tier 5, but he's above like Ramondre Stevenson. Tank Bigsby has gotten a run here. So that's a general range on our ranks in ADP. But what do you think of him as an actual sleeper?
I think that's about right where he should be. I think I've got him at like RB 34 or something. And I think with the price we're paying right now, that almost bakes in the risk that there's some sort of trade possibility, Etienne or someone else from another team landing in Dallas. But man, I would love to see Javonte Williams go back to the guy he was pre-injury, the guy who made everyone mad at Melvin Gordon for being in his way in Denver and everyone wanting, and Melvin Gordon was a pretty good back in his own right, but like everyone just wanted Melvin to get out of the way so it could be the Javonte Williams show in Denver. Like he just had this great combination of power and explosiveness, and he caught some passes too. So if he could be that, like he has a clear runway to get a lot of work for Dallas in what could be a fairly high scoring team. Like with Dak back and with the firepower they have at wide receiver, like the Cowboys should put up some points. And getting the top running back from this team this late in the draft, if he is indeed the top running back and anything like his old self, you could turn a big profit there.
Are you sold that he is? That last little sentence, you almost sound like you're like, yeah, this is a good pick by Jake, but maybe you're not completely sold on it. You're like, if he is.
I just don't know. I mean, we have not exactly got overwhelming affirmation that the old Javonte is back, but we've also haven't heard anything to the effect of, yeah, this guy looks totally cooked. So I don't know.
It's one of those situations where no news isn't good news. It always almost be like, could we get some good news to be good news?
Right. No news is no news in this case.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of cooked, there's different ingredients that put together a sleeper. Sometimes that can be like a player that's going to pop in week 4 or 5. We draft him kind of high. We have to sit on him. Another one of those, ironically, can be kind of a crusty, uninterested player that does, like Javonte, that could play week 1. And then all of a sudden they just work themselves into the entire year when everybody was thinking they would fail. That kind of seemed a little bit like your guy, Pat, where things were kind of lining up where everyone was like, yeah, he's fine, but usage is going to come down. That other guy is going to keep floating and he's going to be the player. But one of those ingredients to your player is a guy that is going to be out there. It looks like week 1, kind of unaffected by anybody else. And maybe this is going to make where he's going even a bigger value. So who is that player?
It's Tony Pollard. And yes, please don't yell at me in the YouTube comments about picking Tony Pollard as a sleeper when he's clearly not a sleeper. He's more of a value pick, and we were told to go outside the top 5 rounds in ADP. Pollard has an early 6th round ADP, and that ADP is probably going to be in the 5th round by this weekend, with the realization that Tyjae Spears probably isn't going to be back anytime real soon for the regular season. And look, I have to admit that I was not all that into Tony Pollard earlier in the offseason, mainly because I do think Tyjae Spears is a good player, and Titans head coach Brian Callahan had said repeatedly during the offseason that he wanted to carve out a bigger role for Spears. Well, now Spears has a high ankle sprain, and high ankle sprains kind of have a way of thwarting the best laid plans. It's typically a 4 to 6 week injury, and then players sometimes aren't themselves immediately upon their return. So Pollard should get a lot of work early in the season. Titans don't really have another running back who could be a 1-for-1 replacement for Spears. Like Spears is a good pass catcher. The Titans have Julius Chestnut, he's had 5 catches in 3 NFL seasons. And they have rookie Khalil Mullings, a former linebacker who probably profiles as a short yardage specialist. I know Pollard hasn't been as efficient the last 2 years as he was as a change of pace back earlier in his career behind Ezekiel Elliott with the Cowboys. But Pollard is a solid runner and pass catcher. Titans faced one of the easiest schedules in the league this year. And last year they had a lot of injuries on the offensive line, but this unit is healthy now. And the Titans signed Kevin Zeitler and Dan Moore in free agency. They could have one of the better offensive lines in the league. Cam Ward should help improve the overall quality of the offense. And, oh, by the way, if you make it to the championship game in your league, Tony Pollard is a Week 17 matchup against the New Orleans Saints, who had one of the worst run defenses in the league last year.
So when you prefaced it, is the idea, and I know what you're getting at, and it's good that we reiterate. I said it at the top, but like we're talking about like between like round 6 and 9. But you really, it seemed like you focused on the value side versus like the sleeper. Is it that you think he can beat his current spot, which is 25 ADP, that's a consensus 24 rank, or do you think it is that he can hold? Because I feel like when you said value, you look at him as like he's a dude that's gonna like really hold that value of where you're drafting him right now.
No, I mean, right now, I think he's better. Like, he should go ahead of where his ADP is. He's kind of a target for me right now.
Okay.
Like, I've got him 48th overall in half point PPR.
Do you think overall, who has the better opportunity to really beat their current value? Javonte Williams down at 36, but becoming like an RB2, or Tony Pollard, who is like a fringy RB2-3 to being like, let's call him like a mid-range RB2?
I mean, Javonte, probably just because he's so much further down in the rankings. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how many points the Titans are going to put up. So Tony Pollard, I don't know if he has a realistic shot at double-digit touchdowns, and maybe Javonte doesn't either. But I do expect the Dallas offense to maybe be a little better than the Titans offense.
Well, yeah, Spears can't stay on the field. That's going to just be more opportunity for Pollard. What do you think about Tony Pollard in this range, especially in that kind of like sleeper versus maybe value sleeper you can hone in on, Jake? What do you think about Pollard?
It's a wet fart came to mind. Like I'm thinking like I'm looking for a snack and I go in the refrigerator and there's that pudding cup that's been sitting there for 3 months and
like a rice cake.
Fine. No, yeah. A rice cake. I won't go that bad. I'm just like, fine. I'll eat the little snack pack and I'll be happy for 5 seconds. Mostly because I was completely out on Tony Pollard before the injury happened. Mostly because he had the entire workload last year until very late in the season, but he even still had the vast majority of it at the end of the season. But his backfield all to himself, and he was still RB25 in points per game. Like, that's the thing. It's like Pollard is fine. And it's not that I disagree much with like what Fitz is saying. Like, where he is, he's a fine value. He's a fine RB2. It's just that's all he's going to be. Like, when you said, do you say hold or the upside? I 100% was hold. Hold the door until you're disappointed and you're sad that you have to let him go. The one thing I will say, the schedule is nice except for week 1. Fortunately, he has the entire workload to save his week 1. But that's what I'm going with here. If there was no injury to Spears, I had Pollard outside of my top 25. Actually, I still do. I am at 26. I had him down around 30. Like, I was rolling the dice. And I think it's going to come down to roster construction. So I'm not going to say like Fitz is wrong 100% to say he's a fine RB2. If you want somebody that you just know what you're going to get, cool. But like when I'm drafting this range, usually Pollard would end up being my third running back, which might sound enticing to some people, but as my third running back, I'm usually waiting another round or two, taking a Javonte, taking a Etienne or Bigsby, taking like those kind of guys where there's a path to getting inside the top 18 or so, where I just don't see that for Pollard. So it depends on what you need. Like if I have a lot of risky wide receivers, then I'd say, you know what, fine, I'll take Tony Pollard. So I really think it comes down to, even though we disagree to a degree, and we're not that far off from each other, it comes down to team makeup for me.
I like the construction idea too of if you got Pollard as the third RB, maybe compared to if you had taken like an RJ Harvey, that was your RB2 or even a Travion. Yeah, like if you think maybe those guys are going to just be a little bit weaker in the first couple of weeks, you really have Pollard for that protection early on. That's
a good way to look at it too.
Yeah, there's like a construction side that really works.
You can even get Pollard with Javonte and be like, I can wait. I don't have to try and plug Javonte into my lineup. I can hold Pollard for a while to see what happens. That kind of situation.
Like a hero RB. Like you take your one big guy and then you wait a while, and then Pollard is number 2 and Javonte is number 3 if you even wanted to do that. So there's some other use cases where he makes a lot of sense. All right, we got 2 more names that are coming up in our value sleepers. But first, get in the game. Best Ball is live at DraftKings. $15 million is on the line with real stakes and real excitement. Best Ball is the biggest fantasy contest at DraftKings. We're talking a $15 million guaranteed prize pool with 2 millionaires being crowned for first and second place. Play season-long fantasy football the DraftKings way. With Best Ball, there's no waiver wires and no roster management. You get bigger rosters so injuries won't in your season. Just draft your team and you're set. If a shot at winning a share of $15 million isn't enough to get you excited, first, I don't know what is, but we're going to try. So check this out. DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. So download the DraftKings app and use code FANTASYPROS. That's code FANTASYPROS for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 million millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of 2 millionaires only at DraftKings. All right, value sleepers part 2. We've both got a couple players in here. I've actually mentioned one of these guys. So Jake, I had mentioned this guy potentially being traded. There's no actually real discussion. It was just kind of a throw out here. There was so much discourse in the Twitter fantasy football verse about his counterpart and how amazing his counterpart is. So I'm setting us up here to talk a little Jaguars running back here. So which of those running backs are you on for a sleeper or value sleeper as your second guy?
Both, but I will say, because we're looking for the answer, who can lead the backfield. Initially in week 1 of the preseason, it was all Travis Etienne. And then when he left the field with the first team, there was a little sprinkler for Bigsby, but he didn't get a touch. And then he got work with the second team. Well, the second week came around and it was the 50-50 split people who were talking about earlier on. And Bigsby was even on the field for passing down work. Now, the reason why I say Etienne over Bigsby is not so much the fact that, like, yes, I acknowledge Bigsby looked better than Etienne running the ball last year. Like, there's objectively or subjectively, pick which avenue you want to go, and he looked better and was better. Going back to 2 years ago, we know how great that first half was for Etienne, but if it's assuming a 50-50 split even, let's just say that's the worst case scenario of what we want for fantasy. We want somebody to have the 60% or better. We want somebody to be the clear lead. But in that situation, I know Bigsby was out there in week 2, but I think we all expect and still believe Etienne would be the pass catching option. So similar to Najee Harris and Jalen Warren of the Steelers last year, I'd rather have the pass catching option. I'd rather have the one with more upside. I'd rather have somebody in the offense that potentially does have to throw more under Liam Cohen and has more explosiveness. And that's why I would take Etienne over Bigsby. That being said, they are both so cheap. This entire backfield is so cheap because of the uncertainty that you can draft all of them. Take flyers on all of them, including hint one that we'll talk about later because of Fitz, is that you can spend on all of them. And I don't really want to draft 3 running backs from the same team, but you could take 2 flyers, and at the cost of 2 flyers, potentially one winning out is going to help your team because they're all cheap right now.
Yeah, and Fitz, that's kind of the thing that jumps out to me is like if Etienne was like 24, if he was like the Pollard value or something like that, and then Bigsby were like 30th, and then Tuten was like 38, you'd look at this and you'd be like, blah. Like it's all just too much, and everyone would probably go to the cheaper end. But I mean, Etienne kicks us off, and he is ADP and ECR ranked 32. So he's almost just a straight up like running back 4 as far as value. He's the back end of whether you want to call it RB3 or flex, however you want to use it. It's a cheap cost. But what do you think about Etienne? Jake alluded, we're going to talk about another Jaguars running back here in a little bit, but the cost is just really low into the 30s. Do you think there's some value sleeper in Etienne this year?
I mean, there could be. I think there's a really wide range of potential outcomes with Etienne, but the cost on all these guys is so cheap. Like it pays to invest in these murky backfields because you could turn a big profit on a modestly priced back. And it was not that long ago, early 2023, as Jake said, that Etienne was basically giving us numbers befitting a first-round fantasy pick. Like he was really good in early 2023. Contrast that to last year when Etienne objectively stunk. I mean, he averaged 3.7 yards per carry last year. He forced 17 missed tackles in the running game all season. He averaged minus 0.28 rushing yards over expected per carry. He averaged 1 yard per route run as a pass catcher. It was just bad. And now he's in the final year of his contract. But maybe he could flourish in a Liam Cohen offense. Like Cohen uses a lot of wide zone, and that's probably a good scheme for Etienne's skill set. But like, what if the Jaguars just kind of decide to move on and turn things over to Bhayshul Tuten playing the lightning role in a Thunder and Lightning tag team with Tank Bigsby? So I don't know. Etienne's got this RB3 average draft position. I can imagine him being an every week fantasy starter. I could imagine him being a guy who people are waiving like 3 weeks into the season.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. What's the scenario where you take him? What does it look like? I have one in my mind. If you want me to set you up here, like I was thinking you go and you take, let's take a Etienne or Jacobs. Just give me one of those hero guys. And then you're waiting. And then all of a sudden you had to lock down your RB2 is Caleb Johnson. And, you've kind of, there might be some potential upside. You're right there. To me, that's kind of the scenario where I start to go, like, I think I was saying it with the last guy, where it's like, all right, I got this, like maybe unquestioned early player rookie that a guy like Etienne would make a lot of sense as a veteran who's going to get some volume at least early on. To me, that's a scenario where I'm probably targeting Etienne a tiny bit more, where if I'm left with my options of being like, wherever you are with Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren, and him, and I've got a Caleb, as my number 2, or even an Aaron Jones as my number 2, I feel like that would prompt me to want to take an Etienne. Would you co-sign on that, Fitzy, is the scenario? Or do you have a different scenario where Etienne would make sense?
Well, Walsh, right now I've got Etienne ranked, I think, 88th overall in half-point PPR, and I've kind of got him as this, he's in this buffer zone between the wide receivers I like and the wide receivers I'm just, like depth guys. So like ahead of him, I've got Jordan Addison, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Jacoby Myers. Below him, I've got guys like Michael Pittman Jr., Deebo Samuel, guys I'm not quite as into. So if I go with a real wide receiver heavy build early in the draft, and maybe I've only got one running back to this point, and I'm looking for, guys who have a chance to emerge as every week running back 2s for me. Like I could put Etienne in that category as long as I'm already sort of happy with what I have at wide receiver.
Jake, any other different scenario that you would build for why Travis Etienne makes sense to your team? Or do you like what we put together?
I probably wouldn't go the Caleb Johnson only because of week 2 in the preseason. That's just a name that was in my mind that went similar to what we were talking about before. Like I would want the cheaper option with Jalen Warren because I don't know what's going on with Caleb Johnson. That's a complete sidebar. That's a conversation for another day.
I was just throwing a
what
name
the
out,
hell was that use in week 2? Why did you draft him if he's not going to be Najee Harris? Why are we doing this with Kenneth Gainwell? So that being said, I would, to your question though, like Caleb Johnson would go back to the previous conversation because of what we just saw in week 2. I want Caleb Johnson with Tony Pollard, and the fact that like I don't need Caleb Johnson in week 1 because that's worrisome now. I think Travis Etienne's the similar thing, is that I want 2 running backs and I want somebody like Tony Pollard, Travis Etienne. I would do that as much as I don't want Tony Pollard because I want a backup plan, or I should say I want a plan in place ahead of him in case he's not the answer. Because if he's not the answer, I agree with Fitz. Move on from him. Do not do the thing where you draft Travis Etienne. It doesn't happen in 2 weeks. You didn't need to drop him, but you held on and it pops off in week 3. He goes back to the bench in week 4. And then it's you spend the rest of the season not knowing when to play him and you miss all the good games anyway.
Yeah, never starting him in the right point here. All right, the second, Pat, this is your second value sleeper. Hit us with him.
Zach Charbonnet. And I want to invest in the Seattle backfield this year. Like I'm very interested in drafting Kenneth Walker. And if I don't get Walker, I want to get Charbonnet. And I'll even consider drafting both Walker and Charbonnet, even though I'm generally not a big handcuffer in drafts. A couple of reasons why I'm so jazzed about the Seattle backfield this year. First of all, the combination of a Kubiak paired with Rick Dennison has historically produced some awesome running games. Like Clint Kubiak's dad, Gary Kubiak, was the longtime offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos under Mike Shanahan. And Gary Kubiak also happened to be John Elway's backup quarterback in Denver. Rick Dennison is a former Broncos linebacker who was either an offensive assistant or the offensive line coach for Denver back when Gary Kubiak was the OC. And the Broncos running game was magic back in those days. They had Terrell Davis, they had Clinton Portis, and they also got these big one-off seasons from guys like Reuben Drones, Mike Anderson, Tatum Bell. Like Clint Kubiak's first stint as an offensive coordinator was with the Vikings in 2021. Dalvin Cook had almost 1,200 rushing yards in 13 games that year. And now Clint Kubiak is running the Seattle offense with Rick Dennison as one of his assistants. And the Seahawks have pretty much signaled that they want to get their running game going by spending a first-round pick on interior lineman Gray Zabel, who looked absolutely phenomenal in the preseason this past weekend, by the way. Like, he was mashing people. And they also spent a 5th-round pick on a 274-pound fullback from Alabama, Robbie Oots. As for Charbonnet, like, he's been really good whenever he's gotten the chance. He averaged 3.35 yards after contact per carry last year. And when Kenneth Walker was hurt, Charbonnet had 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins and 2 more touchdowns against the Cardinals. He's also been really good as a pass catcher, 75 catches over his first 2 seasons. And let's face it, we know Kenneth Walker's had kind of a hard time staying healthy the last couple of years. So I think Charbonnet might have some standalone value, even if Walker is healthy. And he could be a monster if Walker were to miss more time.
It's interesting. A lot of the narrative is around Ken Walker and this team. You hear everybody talking about their love for Ken Walker. He's also one of those weird ones where his ADP and ECR don't really match up. People rank him higher, but they don't draft him at the same spot. He is a ECR 34 and half PPR. So that's inside the top 36, but his ADP is 38. So that's 4 RB spots. And when I say that, I'm not doing overall. I'm just talking positionally. That's 4 positional spots lower where he's being drafted. So really interesting dynamic. Is Charbonnet a guy that you're targeting, Ciely, or is it all about Ken Walker, or neither?
So it's funny. This has kind of been a roller coaster for me, by the way. I was trying to see if Dennison overlapped. No, Sean Moreno. He didn't. I was going back and then looking at some of the names of the Broncos for the year. That was fun. That the rabbit hole I just went down. But anyway, it's gone up and down and up again. So initially I was, because I looked at last year before we even go down this path, which I agree with everything that Fitz has said about this offensive system. But looking at last year and looking at how good Charbonnet did in the absence of Walker, like there was concerns. We hadn't seen it yet. We've seen Charbonnet in bursts, but it kind of be similar to the Warren situation where it's like, do they really want him, 1, to be the guy if Walker's out? And then 2, can he be the guy? A lot of these running backs we'll see throughout the NFL, they're great in timeshares, but when asked to be the guy, they become less efficient. So that was a big question that I thought was answered. So I was like, hey, why wouldn't you use Charbonnet more this year? Why wouldn't you peel off of Ken Walker a little bit and maybe even look like the Steelers? I know I keep referencing them, but they're a good callback for this. And then talk to Michael Sean Duggar of The Athletic, who covers the Seahawks, and said everything from reports, everything with this team has been saying they want Kenneth Walker to be the bell cow. And I'm like, wow, well, that means we need to move back to Kenneth Walker a little bit. But now I'm back in and with Fitz on this because Kenneth Walker needs to get on the damn field for it to be a bell cow. You can be a bell cow all you want, but if you're in the shed getting milk because you can't get on the field, like, I don't even want you out there. So I'm backing on a Charbonnet mostly because I think he needs to be in the conversation with like a Tyler Algier, the Isaac Arendos, where there's a lot of handcuffs that we want, but there's some top tier ones. Charbonnet should be one of the first. Like, you say David Montgomery first, Charbonnet is probably either second or third at worst. So that's why I'm definitely still drafting Charbonnet.
All right, value sleepers in the books. Again, these are these guys that are kind of like floating just before we get to the top 36. So now let's jump to deeper sleepers. These are RBs that are outside of the top 36 and half PPR. We're looking at ranks. We're looking at ADP. Charbonnet actually would have kind of qualified there. Couple players' names have just popped up over the last couple days and been more enticing. And frankly, that is where we're going to start with this very first one, Jake, is we're going to be hitting not any quick hitters or anything like that, but we're going to be moving a little bit more on the deep sleepers. Brian Robinson apparently is on the trading block, and that makes a few names quite interesting. But you're picking the one that maybe more people should be talking about and aren't. It's Austin Ekeler as your first deep sleeper. So let's hear it.
Yeah, before you teed that up, I was actually going to say I was going to throw a Nolan McClain curveball at you with that spin rate, by the way. And look at that for base. But say, look at that. I was going to throw that at you and say, hey, you know what? Maybe we save this name for Pat's last and then talk about both of them. Maybe we pull Pat's up and switch it that way.
Yeah, let's pull Pat's up. If Pat's cool with it, we'll do his name. We'll move.
Yeah,
that
come
up
to him in a second, because I don't necessarily disagree. We'll get to his in a second. The real answer here is I think that Austin Ekeler is just being overlooked. Period. End of statement this year. Austin Ekeler was still productive last year when healthy. And I know there's a question of whether or not he's been healthy, but he is, as of right now. He has been this entire offseason. His role is not changing. And his role, even last year, was an RB3 and a half and full point PPR. And there's a big question, you said, the Brian Robinson trade talk that got started yesterday from Jordan Schultz, and whether or not that even happens is fine, because whether it's Brian Robinson, who Pat's going to talk about, whatever it is, Austin Ekeler's still Austin Ekeler. And that's what I'm excited about here, is also on top of it, you look up and down this depth chart. We've talked on previous shows of why I'm a little bit more positive on Deebo Samuel than a lot of people, mostly because of the jabronis that Jaden Daniels had to throw to last year. It was 200 targets going to all these other names that weren't Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz. And those are just the wide receivers. They've been trying to make things happen. And part of that was Austin Ekeler not being on the field for some of that. I still think Austin Ekeler for a full season could be walking into 70-plus targets. And as so, with the few carries that he's going to get, he'll be an RB3. And that's why it's not that oh my God, you have to smash Austin Ekeler in every single one of your leagues. It's just nobody seems to be talking about him this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And Pat, the big popular name that's jumped up, because we'll talk about these guys as kind of a grouping here. We moved one of your lower names up here, and it's Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who is the big boost. I mean, he's going to fly up boards right now. I mean, we're talking people at RB.
Take him in the third round.
Yeah. Well, they might. With how we've been seeing some of these drafts go. First Travion, and then 1-2 will be Merritt. But, if Robinson goes, I think a lot of people are vaulting him into that spot. And he's a guy that was, 40, 50 ADP who is flying up. As a matter of fact, if I can even try to find it real quick, Merritt was 78 among ECR ranks on RB. So obviously, we have not seen him get caught up. ADP is 64. So things are starting to move, but that's way, way down there. You're making a bet on Merritt getting a lot of run this season and being a value sleeper or deep sleeper.
Yeah, first of all, let me say I totally agree with Jake on Ekeler. There are actually two targets for me in this Washington backfield. Ekeler's been one of the guys I've drafted most often to this point in early drafts. He's going way later than he should. Scored double-digit PPR points in 8 of his 12 games last year. And when Brian Robinson Jr. missed a couple of midseason games with a hammy injury, Ekeler had 134 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. So yeah, he's going way too low. And he's not the guy who's threatened by Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Ekeler's role is going to be the same. He's going to play on passing downs. He's going to play in the 2-minute offense. And he's going to occasionally be the change of pace, play a series here or there, or guy behind whoever's the main early down starter. Croskey-Merritt is absolutely a target for me. And right now, Brian Robinson is the guy with the skull and crossbones sticker, I've got on the bleach that I keep under my sink. The drumbeat with Jacory Croskey-Merritt has just gotten too loud to ignore. All right, so this guy goes by the nickname Bill, by the way, Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I'm not quite sure why yet, but I'm sure we're going to be reading about that soon. He has just been a sensation.
Because he's money.
He's the big, beautiful Bill in Washington right now. Yeah, he's been a sensation in Washington's training camp. And this guy was a late 7th-round pick, was not even invited to the combine. Croskey-Merritt only played 1 full college season in FBS. He almost had 1,200 rushing yards and 17 touchdown runs for New Mexico. Then he went to Arizona, but had eligibility issues and only played one game. But then he had a crazy pro day. He ran a 4.45 in the 40 and high jumped 41.5 inches. So this dude is an athlete, and man, he has been the talk of training camp. And one of the team's beat writers, Ben Standing of The Athletic, has suggested that Brian Robinson might not even make the team because of what a revelation Croskey-Merritt has been so far. And his ADP is like RB64. It's been moving up, but you can still get him late. And it's going to be real easy to move off him and just waive him if, he doesn't pan out. But this guy just might end up being a starting running back for an up-and-coming offense that's going to put points on the board this season. And you can get him like well into the double-digit rounds of drafts right now.
Okay, so let's touch on that for a second, because first, there's a part of me that wanted to push back and just be like, there's also a scenario where there's too many cooks in the kitchen and they could all eat into each other. And we're not going to, on a week-to-week basis, be able to if one guy gets the hot run, then they're the one that, Ekeler this week and Merritt this week. Rodriguez is out there. Debo, you shouldn't dismiss. Debo could take like short yardage stuff, but to your point, the costs are too low. This is kind of back to everything is cost is too low, except this is going to change this coming weekend. So what if Ekeler is going inside the top 30? And what if Merritt is going as a top 36 back as well? What if they're both going in that general range? You said it's really easy to cut. Right now, visually what we're seeing, it is easy to cut. But if people start taking him inside the top 40 and Ekeler inside the top 30, is it really going to be easy to cut? And do you think we should consider a situation where maybe there's more of a rotation that eats into everybody's value if these guys cost more? Pat, start with you.
I don't think Ekeler is moving up just because he has been really stable, like with his ADP and ECR all off season. I don't think people see the possibility of a bigger role. And okay, I kind of agree. It's not going to be a bigger role. So I'm not worried about that. If Croskey-Merritt's ADP moves up that high, it's probably because the team has, in fact, traded or waived Brian Robinson, in which case I'm okay with the higher cost. Still, yeah, you want to give me at RB38 after they've, told Brian Robinson Jr. to hit the bricks? Sure, I'll take Croskey-Merritt at RB38 in that case. But if he's going RB38, if Robinson is still there, and it's just someone in your draft this weekend being the trendy guy, wanting to jump on that in the 7th round, then I'm not going to be that guy. I'll let someone else do that. But beyond the 7th round, I'm starting to get interested.
Jake, would you be comfortable taking Bill over a Cam Scatterbo?
As of right now, the downside here is that if everybody's here come week 1, and I think that's the risk, and I think that's more the reality. We're talking about somebody, yes, he's in the last year of his contract, but again, why would a team trade for a running back in today's NFL in the last year of their contract for anything more than a 6th rounder? And do you really give away a productive running back like Brian Robinson for $3 million just to get a 6th rounder back? It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. This kind of feels like due diligence and the news got leaked and, it's news breaking, it's eyebrow raising, it's going to get headlines is what it feels like. The upside would be I would draft both as an RB3. Brian Robinson's the uninspiring RB3. I would take Tony Pollard before I took him. Croskey-Merritt is the upside one in case Brian Robinson was gone. Hell, if Brian Robinson got hurt next week in practice and wasn't there in week 1, we'd be excited about Croskey-Merritt, who I think there's some similarities to a previous guy on this team as Alfred Morris. And that's peak though. You told me 1,200 yards, 8+ touchdowns, and again, very little in the passing game because I don't think that's his entire game. But a big part being that's Ekeler's. I think he's even possibly a little bit more explosive than Alfred Morris. But all that being said is I think the best numbers, if you want to pull numbers from last year, is Brian Robinson's numbers. I think that's who he could step in and be, which is a fine fringe RB2 or 3. But if Brian Robinson's on the team in week 1, full-blown committee, get the hell out of here because they're not going to not be able to use Croskey-Merritt if they still have Brian Robinson. So that's the worst case scenario, which goes back to my answer. Just give me Ekeler instead of trying to figure out, can I use Brian Robinson or Croskey-Merritt at all?
I legitimately think there's a chance that drafts this coming week in, Merritt's going to fly up boards. So if you're getting at
probably the highest of all 3 of them.
Of all, that's where I was going. I think he goes before everybody. So if you are presented with the value, take it. But I'm not sure the value is going to be there. We're going to see as the hype comes up. But as 2 weeks from now, if like Robinson wasn't traded, we'll see. I also wonder if maybe the blueprint for Brian Robinson trade needs to be closer to a Jordan Mason. If like what the Niners traded for Jordan Mason and a team like that. So that could be where you hit a stall point why he doesn't end up getting traded. So just throwing it out there. It's a great name. And while the value is there, you should take both of these players. I think make really sense, a lot of sense for your teams. Jake, deep sleeper number 2 for you. We're off of the Commanders now.
This is another one it's rising right now, and to go back to about a month ago, I wish I could live in those days again, because not only is the name getting more respect, but Tyler Goodson got banged up, which just takes another name out of the backfield, with it that being the guy behind Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's missed time each of the past 3 seasons, and everybody's just going into this year like everything's going to be fine. Like, we're talking about injury risk with all these other running backs, and nobody ever brings up the Jonathan Taylor name, seemingly except for me. And that's not going to be like, haha, mate. I know other people do. It's just tongue in cheek. But the answer all along has been, and I even got pushback on the comments of this show a few weeks ago when I said David Montgomery type of production, and people like, oh, he's more explosive. Like, the production was my point, and the fact that he is underrated. I agree, as a pass catcher, and that DJ Giddens is. And I think that stepping in and being what I said at the David Montgomery comparison was that kind of divisive 1/cut runner, and like he's going to go and cut through, and he's not like going to dance around. He's not going to try and bounce everything outside. Oh, what does that do in this offense? Exactly what Jonathan Taylor's asked to do. And if DJ Giddens has to step in for a Jonathan Taylor injury, he will be a top 20 running back, because they are going to turn to him 18 times a game like they do any running back. I mean, this is the offense that has made a bunch of no names have production for 1, 2, 3 weeks while Jonathan Taylor's missed time, because more often than not, this offense, this system, this style has turned to one option versus trying to make 4 guys fill in for Jonathan Taylor.
Pat, 67 on ADP for Giddens, 66 ECR rank. So he's like way down there. Probably a guy at the end of any of your drafts you can pick up. Do you think there's in-season value as a sleeper, or do you think the sleeper value is specifically tied to just being the 2 to Taylor?
I mean, I do think he could be one of the more valuable handcuff running backs, and like he's what he should be for a late round pick. But I agree with Jake. If anything happened to Taylor, this is a guy we're probably ranking in the top 20 for any given week at running back. And, I like what Jake said about the 1-cut thing, because that kind of popped when you watch Giddens play at Kansas State. Like, he changes direction without gearing down. And he has this thing where he'll set up his change of direction with these little feints that just have a way of freezing defenders. So, he was a fun watch at Kansas State, just really smooth. And I've seen Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter, still love that name, by the way, talk about how well DJ Giddens has picked things up with pass protection. And that is such a good sign for a young running back who's trying to earn the trust of his coaches. Like, that tells me they might feel comfortable with him as the number 2, and, so long Tyler Goodson and Khalil Herbert.
All right. This was originally Pat's first name. This was the first one. So we moved Croskey-Merritt up. This is, I think, another one of those guys that is going to start rising, especially the last 48 hours, at least before we're recording this, has just really, really been a lot of chatter around this player. So Braelon Allen is number 2, whatever. It doesn't matter here. 47 in ECR. So that's the other goofy thing, is his ECR is higher than his ADP. His ADP was around 51 of RBs, 47 ranked, which you can go check out on Fantasy Pros. I think that's going to start to flip, where I think he's going to start going higher than he is ranked here very shortly. But Pat, talk to us about Braelon Allen as your deep sleeper.
Yeah, I mean, Jets head coach Aaron Glenn has spent the entire offseason talking about wanting to use multiple running backs, and it's not hard to see the 235-pound Braelon Allen as an early down thumper and goal line specialist. I'm a University of Wisconsin fan. Like, I watched Braelon Allen run for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns as a 17-year-old freshman. This guy runs with power. He has good vision. He's got really quick feet for a big back. It's funny. Someone in the Fantasy Pros Discord was asking me about trading Isaac Guerendo for Braelon Allen in Dynasty, and he felt like he should be getting some extra juice as the guy getting Braelon Allen in that deal. And I was like, dude, they played together at Wisconsin, and you realize Guerendo could not get onto the field because Braelon Allen was there, don't you? Like, Garendo was just strict backup who never played behind Braelon Allen. And like Braelon Allen played the entirety of his rookie season at age 20. He was the youngest player in the 2024 draft. Like, admittedly, he's probably not going to offer much value as a pass catcher, but he could potentially score quite a few touchdowns this year. And I think there's like substantial upside with Allen if either Breece Hall or Isaiah Davis were to get hurt, or if the Jets decided they were just going to deal Breece Hall.
Been kind of a lot of grossness with the Jets in general. I feel like before preseason started up in camps, everyone's like, "Ooh, Fields top 5, Garrett Wilson," and now it just feels very negative. It's been like Fields is stunk, and Breece Hall's going to have less usage, and Wilson's just kind of floating out there. The one narrative positive has been Braelon Allen, Jake. So what say you? Are you a buyer on him being a deep sleeper and that his usage is going to be something you're going to want, especially based on his cost?
I am, and this is going to feel like I told you so, but if anybody knows me, that's part of my character anyway. It really, like this, yeah. The Braelon Allen thing, I will say this, I agree with Fitz that my comparison coming out of college was Derek Murray, a Derek Henry, Latavius Murray kind of mismatch, because I don't think, obviously, nobody's Derek Henry, but kind of that Latavius Murray is similarities there. And that was, to go back to the I told you so, was when I was having hesitations on Breece Hall, it was because if we've gone back through Justin Fields' good seasons, I know there's not a lot, but also just the majority of the time that he's been at quarterback, there's been a mismatch of running backs that have been alongside of him. And I don't think you could tell me right now on paper, and I could agree with you, none of them are Breece Hall or even Braelon Allen. But the one telling thing is that when they get to the green zone inside the 10, if you want to use that term, is they turn to and have the person beside him in the backfield as the bigger running back. The bigger running back with the Bears was back there with him. And the bigger running back being that offset of Justin Fields not taking it, well, they want to head to the thumper to kind of offset what the offense is at that point. Again, also different offenses, different everything. I'm just saying that's been the tell so far. So I've been on Braelon Allen as being a timeshare piece and been down on Breece Hall. So I'm with Fitz. And the part about it is that if Braelon Allen right now, he's just still a bench piece, but if something were to happen to Breece Hall, who also was hurt last year, Braelon Allen's going to step in and be an RB2, because I do think Isaiah Davis would be a factor, but Braelon Allen would be the lead in that scenario. Isaiah Davis would be the complementary piece. And the one, it's kind of going back to the Ekeler part of it. The one constant here is that Braelon Allen is going to keep that short yardage and short yards and like that beast thumper role at the goal line, no matter if it's Davis or Hull with him.
I'll tell you, I really do. If you think in construction for just a second, like I was thinking about this as you were going, and it's like an ideal construction of RBs right now where you're balancing out some sleepers has been like, give me hero and then give me upside. So again, if you want to go Achane, McCaffrey, whatever, and then you want to go with like, give me an RJ Harvey or give me a Hampton with that upside. Then give me a third back that is like a safety net to that rookie that I took, like an Etienne, if that is the player. Then my 4 and 5, what do I want? I want to play all upside in that secondary market of players you've talked about. Braelon Allen, if he were to be the guy, Croskey-Merritt, I think Giddens, like those guys that are these solid 2s, but could be amazing if they're 1s. I feel like that's just like a really ideal construction. So it's like hero, rookie upside, core kind of boring player, and then 2 guys that, you know, that can have some value, but if they are put into that spot, like Braelon Allen would be like a critical one for me. So that's just thinking about construction. That leads to our final deep sleepers here. And Jake, this is actually one of these deep sleeper huge upside plays as well. I'm not sure this guy's 100% like the handcuff that you would call it, but there is a handcuff / big upside, kind of like Giddens, I suppose here. But why don't you hit us with your final of the deep sleepers?
Yeah, the final one, it would just make this the Jake feels braggy type of show this week. Is I got laughed at a month ago, 2 months ago, when I was saying, if I'm looking at this backfield and who fits the Raheem Mostert role, it's Ollie Gordon. And we're like, you're stupid. And I'm like, okay, fine. I believe that's who fits this role. Let's go back 2 years. It's just 2023. People are like, Ollie Gordon's going to be a first rounder. Like, remember the ilk that came with him. And yes, there's been concerns of last year and performance wise, a little bit banged up and everything, but like this was somebody who was thought of as a first rounder. So it's not like he's devoid of talent. And even going into this, I was still ranking Jalen Wright in front of Ollie Gordon. Let's make that clear as well, because I thought Wright was going to be the complementary piece to start. But what's been evident so far is Jalen Wright started with the door creaked open for Ollie Gordon. And like Jalen Wright's the one pushing the door open for Gordon to step through. Like he's making it wider and wider and wider. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to lay down on the ground and let you step over me like a mat, because that's basically what Jalen Wright's been doing on the field, is laying on the ground. He has stunk so far. And now I'm not completely out on Jalen Wright, but at some point, the Dolphins watching the two, if you strip the names off the jerseys, anybody at home would be like, that guy's better than that guy. And the guy that you'd be pointing to as the better one is Ollie Gordon at this point. This keeps up. It might even be as early as week 1 that Gordon takes that number 2 role, which can have that touchdown equity if he's playing the Raheem Mostert role. And no, I know he's not as fast as Raheem Mostert. That was the whole pushback I got. But it's that role. It's getting in there inside the 10, inside the 20, and getting some of the touchdown opportunities. And then if anything were to happen to Etienne, which apparently it still has as of right now, they're optimistic for week 1. But you throw out that one where Etienne's banged up, well, then it doesn't matter that Wright's on the field or not, because they're both going to get usage. I think Gordon should be basically drafted, and he's undrafted right now. He should be drafted in every league right now.
Pat, is Ollie Gordon someone that's making the kind of end-of-year rosters as a sleeper you got to get?
He is. Unlike Jake, I have totally given up on Jalen Wright. I think he's bad. And the whole thing with the whole thing,
question mark?
Yeah, the whole thing with Ollie Gordon was, is he the guy who ran for 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns as a sophomore at Oklahoma State, or is he the guy who had under 1,000 yards rushing his last season in a very disappointing junior year? Well, in 2 preseason games, he's looked like the 1,700-yard Ollie Gordon. Like, he absolutely trucked one of the Lions safeties on a run this past weekend, and even had a nice little catch and run. And this is not a dude who caught a lot of balls in college. So, yeah,
No.
I
reminds
like
me a little bit of Jamal Williams, Fitz, to jump in.
Yeah.
All right, now that takes us to our final of our deep sleepers. And Jake doesn't get to speak, and you'll kind of see why. So, Jake, zip. This is all Pat. We kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. So, Pat, your final of the deep sleepers is who?
Yeah, it's Bhayshul Tuten. And I mentioned earlier that Travis Etienne is going in into the last year of his contract with the Jaguars, and was objectively bad in 2024. New Jaguars GM James Gladstone picked Bhayshul Tuten in the 4th round of the draft, and presumably got sign off from head coach Liam Cohen on that pick. And I know some people are going to say, hey, come on, it was a day 3 pick. Yeah, it was, but it was at the top of day 3, early in the 4th round. And this was such a good running back class that there were some really good prospects who slid into day 3. And Tuten is one of the most athletic backs in this excellent running back class. He posted a relative athletic score of 9.55 on a 10-point scale, and he clocked a 4.32 at the combine. Tuten is explosive, man. Has good contact balance for a smaller back, and he catches passes. And Bhayshul Tuten is currently the cheapest member of this extremely ambiguous Jacksonville backfield. In half-point PPR leagues, Etienne's ADP is RB32, Bigsby is RB40, Tuten is RB54. I don't mind throwing a dart in the double-digit rounds at a freaky athlete in this, murky backfield.
Now, why does Jake not get to speak? You're going to find out here in just a second as we finish off those sleepers. But first, let's talk about Draft Assistant. Make sure you never miss on any of these running back steals in your real draft with Draft Assistant. Draft Assistant connects directly to your draft, provides both real-time pick suggestions and estimations on which players might get taken before your next pick. Draft Assistant fully integrates your customized cheat sheets and suggests picks based on your rankings, team build, ADP, and other factors, allowing it to highlight your must-have targets before you get sniped. So dominate your draft in real time without the guesswork with Draft Assistant at fantasypros.com/assistant or on the Fantasy Pros app. You can try it for free during your draft by claiming your 3-day free trial of Fantasy Pros Premium at fantasypros.com/premium. Go and do it today. Now, the final segment, these are the fades disguised as sleepers. These are the Dr. Dooms. They will reveal their mask and we will know who the Doom is. And Jake, that sets us up. You were not allowed to speak, as the final awesome sleeper for Pat was Tuten, because you are unveiling your Doom as whom?
as Bhayshul Tuten. Look, nothing that Pat said about the testing scores and his athletic ability is wrong. What I will also say, and this is something I've said before about Tuten, you know who else was a metric testing phenom? Ty Johnson. What is Ty Johnson doing right now? Nothing. He's a change of pace option for the Bills. They get him some snaps. And that's what I think the risk of Tuten is. Look, I will say there's a world where Tuten's a productive NFL running back as a timeshare piece. I just have concerns that all his athletic ability, all his burst, and all that type of stuff is just hampered by the fact that I know he can push through some tacklers, but this dude gets tackled around the ankles, the knees, chopped down constantly, pass protection issues constantly. And then we've already heard that come up. He can't get on the field. And like he can't get on the field in the preseason by the team that drafted him. He can't get past Bigsby and Etienne right now. And that's what I'm going to is like, yeah, it's fine. And I'm not saying don't draft him. Let's make this one thing clear. I can disagree with Fitz. I can basically, it feels like disagree with the world on Tuten because apparently like I'm the only one who doesn't really like him as a draft pick. It's not that I don't want you to take him. Take him at the end of drafts. My issue is when he's going in front of Nick Chubb, who's the starter as of right now. And yes, we could throw away Nick Chubb in 4 weeks when Joe Mixon's healthy. That's fine. But at least you're getting somebody to start now. Or even if you don't look at it like that, look at it as purely a flyer. Why is he going in front of Will Shipley, the clear option behind Saquon Barkley? DJ Giddens, who we already talked about. Taj Brooks, the clear option behind Chris Brown. Like, why are we taking, or Chase Brown? Chris Brown's a different story. Why are we taking him in front of clear backups? And like, that's my issue with Tuten, the biggest part about it. It's not that I have apparently like issues with Tuten as a whole. It's just where he's also going is what's frustrating about it.
All right, Pat, who is your sleeper?
You're not going to let him push back?
Fade? Oh, do you want to push back? Do you want to push? I mean, you are here. He just laid his case out for Tuten,
I know.
So I didn't know if there was any more.
Well, I want somebody who, you know, if I'm just thinking for me, if I'm positively speaking about somebody and then somebody else comes back and pushes back for 2 minutes, I want to at least get like one chance to come back with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just with Tuten versus Shipley, like Tuten doesn't necessarily need an injury to vault to the head of the class. That's the thing. Like he could actually do it on the merits where they just say, okay, we're kind of done with Etienne. He hasn't been good. He has no future with us because his contract is expiring. And we know that like Tank Bigsby just doesn't catch passes. He's like pretty much cemented into his role. So all Tuten has to do is beat out this guy who was bad last year and is like going into the final year of his contract. So, you know, and obviously the athleticism pays off. And by the way, Jake, throwing shade at Ty Johnson, you know, he led all running backs in air yards last year.
See, so whoop-de-doo. Give me all the Ty Johnson and Tutens of the world.
Not that I want to draft Ty Johnson.
No, that's it. Let's not make him make that show. All right, your fade that is disguised as a sleeper, Pat, to kick us out of the show here.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, Brian Robinson, he is going to be the guy who people are drafting in their home leagues this weekend, and people start whispering at the table, and they're going to be like looking around like, what's wrong with that pick? And people are going to be like, you ever hear of Jacory Croskey-Merritt? So you are putting yourself at risk of embarrassment on draft day if you take Brian Robinson. I mean, the appeal with him is that he's been a functional, workman-like early down back who scored 9 and 8 touchdowns the last 2 seasons and theoretically could have double-digit touchdown upside in this Commanders offense that's on the rise. You know, and I think some managers are going to see Robinson's name in the queue and think, well, he's one of the few starting running backs still available, and we're almost into the middle rounds here. But man, the Jacory Croskey-Merritt buzz, it's like the late afternoon cicada buzz in my neighborhood this time of year. It's just so loud. And, you know, the Commanders have reportedly tried to shop Robinson to other teams. Like, I would be terrified to draft Robinson right now. So
there really is no great situation for him. If he stays, Merritt's going to eat into him. If he goes, he's most likely, in probably 90% of scenarios, an RB2 in some type of weird committee. So it's really just not a good situation. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, the thing is, like right now, Robinson's ADP is 78 overall, and he is in the same neighborhood as guys like Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, some of the last wide receivers that I feel good about drafting. Like the opportunity cost of getting Robinson is just like, that's not exactly trivial right now.
Lots of sleepers. We want to hear from you guys. Your favorite from this episode, your number one favorite RB sleeper below. And drop some that you think we didn't talk about that we should have in the comments. We get you hooked up. The Athletics own Jake Ciely. Fantasy Pros own Pat Fitzmaurice. And just little old me, just hanging with you guys for all your RB sleepers. Make sure you guys lock into the Draft Assistant. We got the draft kit. We've really got everything set for you for this draft coming weekend and the ones beyond. So you know what to do, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. That's going to do it. For Jake, for Pat, I'm Welsh. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros, the Football Podcast. Bye, friends.